and our event beginning today. So thanks for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jamie Heron. I'm the SUNY Online Program Manager at the SUNY Center for Professional Development. And we got this HyFlex webinar series together along with a planning committee of really great people across the SUNY campuses here in response to requests from our SUNY campus members wanting to know more about HyFlex, the learning model that is. So I hope you were all able to attend the Monday session in which we had Dr. Beatty, who kind of developed the HyFlex model, came in and talked to us and shared some materials with us about the HyFlex learning model. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, we had administrators and IT and learning environments, faculty and staff discussing those options. And today we're going to focus on issues specific to faculty relative to course development, delivery, design, etc., what's entailed. We're going to run through a list of questions that I'll pose to our panelists who are faculty represented across campuses that are in the process of implementing HyFlex for an upcoming semester, and for campuses, they're representing campuses who have already implemented HyFlex on their campuses. So again, in the same lens, from the same standpoint, from the last 2 days, we're trying to provide this kind of open-minded, critical approach to learning more about HyFlex. So we might hear some opinions that demonstrate some of the challenges associated with HyFlex and others that are the benefits, the value, the goals, etc. So we'll hope to address all of the different facets of what you need to consider when you're looking at HyFlex as a learning model. So I'm going to take a moment here to kick it over to the panelists and to introduce themselves. And in this instance, I'll actually call on people to introduce themselves, but for the rest of the panel, people are just going to chime in and provide their feedback as they feel appropriate. So Amy, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Amy Conley. I teach accounting and business at Genesee Community College, and I've had the chance to develop and teach 3 different HyFlex classes that are accounting courses at our college. So I'm happy to be here and share my very positive experience that I've had so far.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Next to Karen.
Everyone, I'm Karen Wicca. I'm a criminal justice professor at Genesee Community College. I had the privilege to work with Judy Littlejohn at our school, and I helped develop the whole procedure for implementing HyFlex at our school. I can't take any credit, Judy did most of it, but I was with them on the panel, so I helped to develop all the processes and procedures and the thought behind how to develop a proper HyFlex class that's, doing what it's supposed to be doing. And I was planning on starting this semester with my first HyFlex officially, but then with everything that happened in the spring, I just automatically converted all my classes to HyFlex. And so I got thrown in to do it that way. And then I did have an officially registered HyFlex class this semester.
Great, thank you. And next to April.
Hi everyone, I'm April Daniels. I teach for Monroe Community College in the ESOL Transitional Studies Department. And at MCC, we're very much in the development stage. My colleague on the panel, Andrea Gilbert, is helping develop that. Arguably, she is developing it, and I'm riding her coattails. My colleague, Eric Berg, who is in attendance here today, he and I have been implementing some of the tenets of HyFlex this semester.
Great, thanks. And Janet?
Hi, I'm Janet Weisdorp. I teach in the Department of Education and Human Services at Monroe Community College. And in the spring, as an adjunct in the Business and Economics Department, I'll be teaching a HyFlex ECHO 101, Personal Money Management. And I volunteered because I think the students are going to benefit from it. And I'm very, very excited to be here today and to share and to learn.
Great. And Michelle?
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Currier. I'm from SUNY Canton, and I teach criminal justice. SUNY Canton has been doing we call it locally flex rather than high flex. We've been doing that since fall of 2017, and I've taught in the flex modality since spring 18. So I've done a number of flex courses. I've also, because I wear a couple of different hats, I was previously the chair of the Online Learning Advisory Committee on campus. So that group was instrumental in making some recommendations about flex learning on our campus. And I'm also currently the campus governance leader at SUNY Canton. So if there are questions about that are governance related in terms of policies or academic standards and things like that, I can talk a little bit about what SUNY Canton has experienced there as well.
Great. I think that people would be interested in that perspective in particular. And then finally, but not least, Andrea.
Hey everyone, my name is Andrea Gilbert. I'm an instructional designer at Monroe Community College. And we are, like April said, we are in the very early stages of planning for HyFlex, piloting in the spring semester with about 7 different courses. So I'm working with faculty and I'm excited to share and learn from everyone today.
Great, thanks, Andrea. And finally, in the chat, I'm going to have Mike Jacobs from Monroe Community College helping me moderate and facilitate that chat a little bit. So thanks to Mike for that. And just to let you know, as we progress through a series of questions, we're going to first focus on what's expected of a faculty member from a broad level or broad view about what's expected of a faculty member. We'll move into what makes an effective HyFlex instructor, then to how much work and what work goes into developing a HyFlex course. We'll touch on some issues surrounding students and student support, what students need, what students experience in HyFlex courses. And then we'll pop into what kind of supports that faculty expect, need, et cetera, what's effective, what they might wish in retrospect they had, et cetera. So I'll pose it to the panel here. So broadly, what's expected of a faculty member who's contemplating developing a course using the HyFlex learning model?
Well, I guess I could start. I don't mind. In our school, that's what I worked with Judy Littlejohn, and we developed a whole entire packet to prepare faculty that are interested in this to help create the class. So there's a timeline, there's all kinds of checklists. So if faculty are interested in doing this, they first have to get approval that it's going to be okay. And then they have to submit an outline of how they're going to do it. They have to meet with the online learning people from our school, and they have to go through different quality checks to get the class even accepted as a HyFlex class in our school. So for us, that initial decision is quite a bit of work, and you have to give yourself some time ahead of time to plan and prepare and have this review process done to make sure that we maintain the quality of the program within the class. So that's how we do it at our school.
Great.
And I'll piggyback on that. We had a lot of roundtable discussions and chances for faculty to meet with Judy Littlejohn and others to discuss ideas and concerns. So it was a process. It wasn't something that faculty were just thrown right into. I was actually one of the faculty members that piloted the program and had a lot of support through that. I will say there's an advantage, I think, for faculty who are used to teaching online or who have an online course that you can then take and turn into this HyFlex model. I think there's a definite advantage there if you have a strong online background.
At Canton, we were actually sort of thrown into it to begin with. And so we have also as an institution been learning as we are going. And for my particular case, the first Flex class that I taught was already developed as an online class. But that is not true for everyone who started doing Flex. And so we actually learned along the way that best practices is really to consider the fully online asynchronous student as the baseline when you're developing a class. And so we actually passed a resolution locally on our campus that requires that every faculty member who teaches a flex class has to have that class developed as a fully online class first. And so that flex class is then subject to our regular course review process. And our course review processes require that we have very specific timelines for that. So if you're teaching in spring, the course has to go through review in fall. And so it has to be completely prepared by November 1st to go through a peer review process. And then you've got, once it's reviewed, you've got time to make any revisions that are necessary before it goes live in the spring. And then we have a similar process for courses being taught in the fall. Those courses have to be all completely done and ready for review by April 1. So we do have a significant amount of lead time that is required leading up to teaching a flex class. And we have a very rigorous process for quality review on our campus because we've been doing online learning for a really long time. So we actually are one of the few institutions, I think, in SUNY that has required quality review that got approved as a governance initiative on campus too. So students or faculty cannot teach online unless they do our governance approved course quality review process.
Anyone else for that question? If not, there were some follow-ups for Karen within the chat about whether or not that packet is publicly available or something your institution might be willing to share, and who does the approval for the faculty instructing those courses, or who want to instruct. How does that approval process come about?
Right now where it's posted, it's not publicly available, but that I'm only a professor, so it's not my proprietary property to disperse, but so I don't know if Judy could answer that better than I could, because I see she's in here. But so I don't know the answer to that. But the approval process, how I did it is I went to my dean and said I would like to do this as a high flex course when we were doing the schedule for upcoming semesters. Once he gave the thumbs up, then it just basically completely transferred to our online, like where Judy works, for to go through that whole process to establish the whole approval process and the preparation, just like she said for Canton, where you had to actually go through quality assurance checkpoints. And that's all done through our Office of Distance and Online Learning. So that they're the ones that you had to meet with them and talk with them, and they will review the different steps. So one of the things I think we're going to talk about is how much work it is. It's a lot of work in the sense that it's all preparing ahead of time. This is not a class you can just walk into that day and decide you're going to do every single thing that you're going to do in the class. Every homework assignment, every discussion has to really be done thoughtfully. And you have to think about how you're going to do it in all the different modalities prior to starting the class.
Right, that's really helpful. And as a follow-up for Michelle, you were asked, how do faculty members respond to the policies regarding HyFlex? Has there been a lot of resistance about having to teach the class online first and having to go through the quality assurance process?
So I was actually just trying to respond to that in the chat, and I'm glad that you asked me that so I could just say all of this out loud. It will be easier. So there has been some resistance, yes. And in part that was related to, I think, and I noticed that somebody just recently posted the definition of flex in the chat too, which I think is important because I'm pretty sure SUNY Canton may have drafted that definition in the first place, in part because there was a lot of confusion among faculty about what flex actually meant for us. And one of the things that has been a concern for faculty is the inability to take attendance, right? So faculty on our campus, at least some faculty on our campus, have been really wedded to the idea that student success is a function of requiring attendance in the classroom space. And so having to abandon that idea that you can require students to be there in person or even in the live sessions has been a really significant challenge for some faculty members to kind of get over. And so that actually was part of the reason why I had a conversation with our administrators on campus about the need to kind of envision the class as fully online first, fully online asynchronous first, and then build in the synchronous components. Because if you do it the opposite way, you end up teaching, which is kind of what happened to Canton the very first semester or two. You kind of end up teaching with an empty shell. You provide your syllabus and then you show up and you give your lectures and students attend or they don't, but they don't have, if you do it that way, they don't have that robust, fully developed online asynchronous course that a student can choose. So as per the definition, a student can be a 100% completely asynchronous learner in a flex class as per our campus definition and the SUNY definition. And so if you don't have that complete structure available from day one for the asynchronous learner, then they're left kind of without a rudder in the class, right? If they don't want to attend the live online sessions or the live face-to-face sessions, then they really need to have that significant, completely built course upon which their learning will grow. However, faculty weren't envisioning it in that way in the first place. They were intellectualizing it as, I'm going to do live online and live in person at the same time. I'm going to have a syllabus like my face-to-face class, and I might have some supplements in Blackboard, but they weren't really seeing it from the perspective of the asynchronous online student. And so those were kind of the foundations of, that was the kind of foundation of the issue that we had when we had these discussions in our assembly and this resolution went through governance. It really required kind of a reconceptualization of what flex actually meant. And I think that at SUNY Canton, one of the things that we were, as an institution, we were doing was trying to encourage faculty to adopt this modality without really having a broader sense of what the actual definition meant. And so once we had more clarity on that, then the policies and the pushback were much, much reduced.
Great, thanks very much. So I'm going to progress on. There were a couple questions in the chat that actually fit in with anticipated questions that we'll answer a little bit later. So we're going to address some of those in 15 or 20 minutes. But let's move on to the next question with, what does it take to be an effective HyFlex instructor? What are the lessons learned and challenges for developing and delivering within this modality that allow you to become that effective or to be that effective instructor?
I'll take that one. So again, we're very much in the development stage, but already what I've learned is that you have to have a collaborative spirit. Recognizing that it takes a team to develop and successfully implement this model is paramount. At MCC, we're extremely fortunate to have a wonderful instructional technologies team. And Andrea Gilbert for years has been helping me implement just every little step of the way. Anything I tried to do online with Blackboard, first it was uploading assignments, and then it was using the gradebook. And but some people have very little, we have varying levels of expertise around online technology, online learning. And so they already, within just a couple of weeks, Andrea developed a shell for the Flex Model course that I can customize. They're creating customized Blackboard orientation videos for our students, and they give us all sorts of ideas for engaging with students in a virtual format. So I think sometimes people think of their instructional technologies staff as just sort of techie people, but these are really skilled educators as well. And it's their business to figure out how to deliver engaging content online. So I think that collaborative spirit is is a necessity, and also understanding and forgiveness around the fact that everything's not going to work out as great as we hope or as we planned it the first time around. I think we have to have a lot of flexibility and openness and curiosity and compassion with ourselves around this, because we're all learning this.
Yeah, and if I could just add on to what April said, also being at MCC, being extraordinarily flexible is really important. And yeah, we're all really very flexible and we really work well together. Avoiding self-doubt. You can't worry that you're not, yes, exactly. You've got to be able to take those safe risks and embrace whatever happens to come along. And then you really can't worry that it's going to be more work, because it's really not going to be more work. I've been thinking about my ECHO class, and one of the things that I want to make sure happens is that I match active learning. I'm not going to come in and lecture. I'm going to come in and we're going to actually be actively engaged, maybe through an arts integrated approach or a project-based learning activity from week to week. And as that gal said at the beginning, that's going to require a lot of planning up front, but you get that done and then you just tweak it the rest of the semester.
Yeah, and just to add on, I think being open-minded about traditional things like attendance, because that was a big obstacle for me initially, was how am I going to handle this attendance issue? So I can understand the comments that have been made about that. How I've handled it is I've shifted to participation assignments each week instead of attendance. So I'm building in, creative ways that students need to participate each week. I'll embed things within video lectures. And so that way it's a good handle on whether students are participating and watching the videos. And they also learn quickly that there's an incentive to be doing that too, in terms of being graded on that on a weekly basis. And once you set those up, like Janet just mentioned, you're able to tweak going forward. I'm really looking forward to teaching these classes a second time to be able to make some of those adjustments.
Now, I would just add to that. I had organization, and it really goes to what Janet was saying. It's not more work, it's just more upfront work. So it's just, my two things would be organized and creative, which both were covered. You have to be organized. So I find that you have to spend the time planning ahead, and you really need the whole class mapped out before you start. So it's not more work, it's just you have to do it up front instead of just doing it each week right before the class. Yeah. And then it goes with what Amy was saying. I have creativity. You have to be flexible and open-minded, and you have to really create thoughtful assignments that, so you can take your traditional assignments, but you have to be creative on how to do them in each of the different modalities. So there's different things I thought, oh, I can never do this. This is in person. And then I realized that I actually was able to do a lot of them in a different way. And sort of funny with COVID, it's forced a lot of things that I never thought I would have been able to do. I would have never thought that I could do group presentations in that setting. And now with Zoom, we have to, because everybody's on Zoom. So I feel in some ways that the COVID stuff has really pushed me to be more creative in ways to do assignments, which is only going to enhance my ability to do HyFlex in the future. And then the last thing I'd say about attendance, I thought of a really creative way if attendance is really an issue for people. I was attending, so my background is law, I'm a lawyer. And I was attending continuing legal education seminars. And as a lawyer, you have to have so many every year, and you have to certify that you attended. And what they do is they just interject key words in the middle of the lecture. And then, so what I have done this semester is I have tried to remember every lecture, like in the middle of the lecture, say my key word today is HyFlex. And then by the end of the week, they just shoot me an email and tell me the key words. And it's worked pretty well. So if you're really concerned about attendance, that is one way to get around it if you needed to somehow have an attendance record for the people that are watching the videos.
Great, thanks. Anybody else want to address the question about being an effective HyFlex instructor, or are we ready to move on?
I can just add, everybody I think did a really good job of talking about the flexibility. I think is really important. And I just think it's really important to be able to build a sense of community between all three modalities too. So I think, and I think somebody mentioned this before, kind of designing for the online student too, because we want to make sure that everyone is having a similar experience. And really kind of thinking that through is really important. And communication and organization, I think those are all kind of essential elements for being effective trying this out. And it is, it's not going to be perfect the first time, and we're learning things along the way too. So I think having that flexibility is so important.
Great. So we'll move on to talk about course development. I know there have been a number of questions in the chat that specifically related to course development, as it's our primary focus when we're contemplating what it's going to be like to deliver a HyFlex course. So much of it goes into development itself. So can we address how much work it takes to develop an effective HyFlex course, like how much for faculty and how much needs to be developed ahead of time, et cetera? It sounds like all of it from consensus, but let's talk about the amount of work that it's taking, if we could.
I mean, I can jump in from our perspective. And again, we're new to this process. So, traditionally a fully online course to develop will take about a full semester at MCC. And I know the other institutions talked about the process for that. We have a team-based process. We have guidelines for how and timelines for working through that. We've been very flexible with HyFlex, so we're kind of treating it the same as the development process, providing materials for instructors so that they can kind of plan out the course. Like April said, we provided course templates, and we've used our fully online template that we normally use for development. We enhanced it a little bit. I know Judy Littlejohn, she had posted some templates on the SUNY site. So it had a lot of information about just guiding information to give students a background of what is a HyFlex about, giving them all the resources kind of built right into that so that faculty don't have to think about that. And then our template also aligns with the OSCAR rubric for course development. So in a sense, you're kind of ensuring that course quality along the way too, from the very beginning. So it's not an afterthought. So that is kind of how we've approached it. And again, we're still going through that development process now, but also it was, we started mid-October, which is much later than we would like to start, but we're making it work, and our faculty have been awesome and really flexible. So we really appreciate that.
I think too, to follow up on something Karen said, with COVID, I think the learning curve is lessened now because a lot of faculty have built in some of these components having to teach remotely. So I think that's a real advantage going forward, the experience that we've all had, these past 2 semesters here.
I would back up what Michelle said earlier. When I was originally deciding what class I was going to try this with for the first time, I was considering just an in-person class that I was teaching. And the more I thought of it, I can't even imagine starting this from an in-person class. So I switched to a course that I had already fully developed online. So I actually really like what Michelle said, is that they even require that first, because I think you really do have to have that shell. You have to have the organizational structure, you have to have the shell, you have to have those concepts built before. It's much easier to go from online, I think, to doing HyFlex than to go from an in-person to HyFlex, because then you still have to build that entire online course. So it would blow my mind to even not have, I couldn't even imagine starting a class that didn't already have the online shell built. It would be really difficult, I think.
So we, Karen, we're starting from face-to-face, but I could not agree more with what you and Michelle have said about starting with the asynchronous online component. I think anytime you start with the population that has been historically the most marginalized and you build up from there, automatically you're going to create a safety net for everyone in between. right? So Caesar McDowell says if we concentrate our designs in the margin, then the people in the middle get covered, and he uses a tent analogy. Some of you have probably seen this. If you stake it far out in the margins, well, the middle is covered, and the further out you stake it, the stronger the structure becomes. And so that's been my approach too, to develop a fully online course and then build out from there, because then if you catch everyone on the outside margins, then everyone in the middle is automatically receiving the support that they need as well.
Great. Anybody else want to speak to that? Okay, then we'll move on to the next question. People have already kind of touched on this a little bit, what the course design process looks like for HyFlex courses at other institutions. Does it resemble online course design processes, or is it modified? So I think we're going to step past that question, because I think that got built into people's responses there. So let's get into specifics. So how do you approach syllabus development for a HyFlex course?
At Canton, we have a template for face-to-face syllabi and a template for online course syllabi, and then everything that would be considered flex or hybrid on our campus would use the template for the online course syllabus, and then you would customize that for any additional or alternative expectations for the flex students.
And in that template, does it have language that sets expectations for how students move in and out of whichever modality they're choosing?
That would be on an instructor basis.
Okay.
So we have some specific language, not in our syllabi, but in our course listings for students, that specifically alert them to pay attention to the syllabi of their respective faculty for their course specific policies.
Okay, makes sense.
And
The
I
other
would
thing,
add- no, you go ahead. Go ahead,
the only
Karen.
other thing I was going to add is I would definitely start from an online syllabus from those concepts. And then I saw that Judy said where the packet is that you can find. She was wonderful in designing suggestions. So if you wanted in general, like you did a debate in your class on a certain topic, you were debating the death penalty, and you wanted to turn that into a format that could be utilized in all the different modalities. In that packet that we created, we give instructors different creative ways to do that. So when you're designing your syllabus, you can think, well, I typically do this. How can I design my syllabus and these assignments and include them in my syllabus in a way that are going to cover everything? And in that package, she gave really good suggestions on all the different ways to do different typical things you would want to do in your class.
And we were talking, I think it was yesterday, about the need to make explicit the technology requirements for the class so that students understand this isn't really a class that can be conducted on your telephone effectively. Just letting them know what they're going to need.
That's important. Anybody else with a comment about syllabus specific information?
We do have a college-wide syllabus template that we just started using this semester. But within our online template that we give to faculty, there is a little bit more explicit language about minimum requirements and just some of these extra considerations that you wouldn't necessarily have in a traditional face-to-face syllabus. So we've also included that. So I think we're trying to figure out the best way to, give that information to faculty. So I think that's still in progress.
I would just add one more thing too about the syllabus and attendance. Be really specific in your syllabus what your attendance requirements are. So if you want them to be able to just do the class completely online and not watch the videos or have requirements of watching videos, then you can say that. But if your requirement is, even if it's totally asynchronous, but they have to watch your lectures, make sure that that's very clear and set forth in your syllabus so your expectations are very clear and they can't later challenge and say, well, I didn't know I had to watch an hour video or something like that. So.
Okay. Great. So let's talk about a question that was in the chat, and I think that Karen, you kind of addressed this slightly. You touched on the surface of it. How do you maintain that equity or parity and meet course objectives across modalities, making sure that an assessment that you're doing in an asynchronous environment meets the same learning objectives and in the same kind of way that you do face-to-face, et cetera? How do you meet those needs?
I don't want to dominate. I don't want to keep talking, but I think that goes back to the pre-planning where you really have to think about each assignment in really great detail. And it's difficult, I think, sometimes, because if we're going to have like an in-class debate when you're in the video, then do you really want to make them also do a writing assignment to prove that they did it? So I do struggle with this a little to make sure that it's equitable. I guess I've sided more on just having them have to turn something in. So if I take attendance and they're there and they participated in the discussion, then I tell them on the assignment, you can say, you know, discussed in class, and then they can just submit it. Where if they weren't, then they have to actively participate in the assignment. So they're both doing the same thing, they're just doing it different ways. So like the debate, maybe if you're actively participating in the debate in the video or in the synchronous class, they can just submit to me, I completed this in class, and I can check my attendance. Where if they weren't there, then they have to actively participate in a discussion where they're discussing in the discussion board the different aspects. So it definitely goes back to that creativity. You really have to think about what you're trying to achieve. Like when you're doing a debate, what is your ultimate goal in achieving at the end of that class? What do you want? And then think about, well, if you're not actively speaking in a video, how else could they demonstrate to you that they achieved the same thing? And you just have to be flexible in the way you do it.
I think using a, go ahead, Janet.
Oh, thanks, April. And just to add on to what Karen was saying, looking at the major objectives, the threads. In every course, there are probably 3, 4, 5 major threads. And so being able to tap into those. And then when I'm meeting with my students on campus, all I'm doing is reinforcing those lessons through alternative instruction, so that, as Karen said, even if you can't participate this Thursday, know that that's what we did. And then next Thursday, this is what we're going to do. And this is why we're reviewing it. And so we're constantly scaffolding new lessons against previously learned content. And that really helps then to keep that connection for everybody. Thanks, April.
And I would add, I'm not sure if this is what you were getting at, Janet, but the flipped classroom model seems to work really well. Yeah, so if all of the content and learning opportunities are online, then you can, when you come to class or work, Zoom in synchronously, or everyone for mine, everyone engages in in online discussions, whether or not they attend face-to-face or not. Yes. That provides the same learning opportunities for all of the students, regardless of whether they're coming to school face-to-face or doing all of their work at 3 a.m. asynchronously.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that scaffolding is really important in this type of learning environment. So let's say if I'm teaching motivation theories, I'll have to assign the students into groups to each research a different theory. Then it gets discussed in class, or there's a discussion post to it. Then there's a follow-up assignment to that with, a follow-up based on what the presentations were. So it's definitely the scaffolding and working in, different ways, and other than just teaching it in one class in a lecture.
And I'll add in, we had earlier discussions this week about this kind of assessment, how you treat it for face-to-face students, for synchronous online versus asynchronous. And there were a number of faculty who indicated that they put all of their exams asynchronously, and that kind of makes it more equitable across all 3 modalities. So there are lots of different approaches, offering different types of assessment, or offering one type of assessment offered in the asynchronous modalities so that everybody has access to it. And then there, it's kind of, if they have to be proctored or if it's a certain type of question, then they're all going through the same kind of thing and addressing each of those learning objectives in a similar fashion. So there are lots of different approaches, it sounds like, and it's all what works best for your specific course. Speaking of needs for specific courses, what happens when you have components, if any of you can address this, have components within your course that require hands-on attendance or participation from your students? Has anybody had to address that specific problem in their HyFlex courses?
I mean, I would assume that we all do to some degree. I don't see any. None of us are bio teachers, right, or chemistry teachers. When I speak to other faculty members, that the allied health programs and the bio and chem classes seem to struggle the most. But even as a reading and writing teacher, it pains me to not be in the class with a student looking over their shoulder and pointing out things. And but I think these can be addressed with the document camera, and but that is the struggle. That is the primary struggle, and I don't have an answer. I think there are little tricks that we can use, like the document camera, discussion boards, breakout rooms, but that will always be an inhibitor, I think.
Yeah, as an example, I have my class play Monopoly in accounting, initial accounting courses. So I really miss out being in school doing that. That's how they get to know each other. I've tried to come up with some creative ways where we tried an online version. I give options for find a Monopoly game and play at home. And so again, it came down to some creativity and having to be open-minded in how I was structuring those assignments. So I didn't lose out on that experience for the students.
In reference to required components where there has to be attendance, there have been instructors who have offered HyFlex courses, but that have indicated that there are certain things that require the student to come to campus on a specific day. They might be able to choose which day or which time, but that the students understand that there is a face-to-face attendance component, and that might have to vary programmatically by course, et cetera. But I think as long as those expectations are set at the beginning within your syllabus, as students are registering for a course, again, that at least sets that expectation so that you can address those issues with your students. What do you find is the best way to structure group work for your HyFlex courses?
So I have done group work even on my online courses for a while, and I just use the tools within Blackboard. I create groups, and then I give them access to all the tools with the group, so they have the access to a blog so they can communicate to each other, they can share documents. And then a lot of times for group assignments, I actually have them create the wiki right within Blackboard, and then they can all work on the assignment together through the wiki, and then I just grade right through the wiki. And then, like I said before, with HyFlex, it's even better. Like a lot of times with online, I struggled with oral presentations. So I had kind of gone to, well, okay, maybe you can film it. But now, even with with everything that's going on with COVID, I'm just scheduling times where they're all Zooming with me at the exact same time, and then they're presenting through Zoom. So it's actually opened up more ability to do those kind of group projects now because people are more comfortable with Zoom technology and group work. So that's how I do it. I just use the features within Blackboard to create groups. And then in class, so when I first assign the group projects, I put them in their breakout rooms with their group to discuss the project when I initially assign it. And then different times throughout the semester when different parts of the project would be due, I'd give them 5 to 10 minutes in class to reorganize with their group through Zoom. I just keep putting them in the breakout rooms. I'll do it like the last 10 minutes of class and just say, when you're done, you can just leave. And that seems to work pretty well.
Anyone else have group work within their courses that they'd like to share? Okay.
Mine is Oops, sorry. I was
Oh,
just
please
going to
go
say
ahead.
mine is very similar, other than that I do not use Zoom for my classes. I use Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, and so the students, in fact, when I first started doing flex classes, we began, and the institution still uses Panopto, which is a technology that allows you to record and stream at the same time. But in my evolving pedagogy, I started using Blackboard Collaborate Ultra for my flex classes instead of Panopto, because the students were in Panopto, they were able to be on the stream, but not to be as engaged as the students can be in Collaborate Ultra. And Collaborate Ultra has some maybe slightly different tools than Zoom, but the students are familiar and comfortable with that technology, and it's been very useful. So this entire semester right now, my flex class involves student presentations every single week, and so they are quite good at it right now, and they seem to be very comfortable.
Anyone else on groups?
I think there's a lot of collaborative tools out there that can be used for groups. I know that's, we're as we're going through this process, we're trying to help faculty kind of sort it out and what that looks, what group looks like, work looks like for their particular class. So we're exploring what we have as options in the classroom. So we might have extra laptops where maybe face-to-face students could meet with online students. So we're kind of exploring that more. So I think it will evolve, but I think there are a lot of tools out there. And as you already mentioned, we use Blackboard, we use Zoom on our campus, and we also have VoiceThread and Ensemble, some other different things. But I think just with the combination of what's available and just some of the free things that are out there, really trying to build an engagement, I think, is important for students, however you do it, and just being comfortable with, the options that you have. So.
Great. So that will take us into a couple of questions we have about specific to students, and what does student to student and faculty to student engagement look like in both the asynchronous and synchronous modalities, both the face-to-face and synchronous online modalities? What's that look like for the HyFlex learning model?
Well, I can say that I'm going to do exactly what Andrea suggested. We had talked about it, and I like the idea of having my students in the HyFlex classroom on laptops so that they can interact with their peers via remote in real time, just like we are through the chat and face-to-face. And I really think that's going to be very, very exciting. And I think it will actually result in a lot of interest for those people that are viewing us at home who will want to be part of the action then.
Sorry, you can go ahead.
No, go ahead, Karen.
I keep interrupting you. You should go first.
I was just going to say, I agree with Janet, and also discussion forums are really helpful for this. I found even before I started teaching online that students will reveal things and they'll be a little more candid in a discussion forum. And the discussion forums provide the opportunity for asynchronous students to participate just as equally as face-to-face and synchronous Zooming students. And also you can give students class time, face-to-face students, to participate in those discussions, and they can chat with one another as well. So there are lots of ways to get at engagement. People have been teaching online for a long time and doing this fairly successfully. And also a lot of the work and I started doing this semester, the process work that students engage in for reading and writing, they post that to discussion forums so that they can give one another feedback and ask clarifying questions and make suggestions and whatnot. And again, so that's something that's always available for our asynchronous students as well.
And I was going to say the exact same thing about discussions. So we were on the same page. I think that they're really important. I've actually completely changed my philosophy on discussions. I used to use them in a completely different way. And obviously I teach criminal justice, so there's really cutting edge, interesting topics every week. But I've really turned my discussion, even for my in-person classes, for exactly what April said, people don't always want to talk in class. So I've turned my discussions into being those kind of deeper debates you would have on critical issues. And I use it for in-person, and I mean, even my in-person classes now have to engage in weekly discussions. And it just allows I found it's allowed for a much deeper discussion than you even have on a face-to-face, because I can post articles. I love TED Talks. I can find really important TED Talks and I can link them to the discussion, and it gives them some background information they may not have had when they arrived in class. And it allows for a much deeper, and I found really engaging and interesting discussions. So I agreed with her on discussions.
Great. Anyone else there for that that faculty to student or student to student engagement? I know we're running out of time here. We have a couple more questions to get to, so I'll try to do that here. As far as what it looks like for students as they choose which modality works best for them any given week, what does that look like? Do you see any patterns with student modality preference? And what are those students doing when they're face-to-face? Are they on laptops? Are they engaged with the students who are online online synchronously, et cetera?
Well, I have found that it does tend to be the same group of students. There's not as much switching back and forth between modality as you might think. But for me, teaching accounting, half of my population, student population, they're working, adult learners. So having to be on a Zoom call during the day is not going to work for them. So I have found there's been less switching back and forth than what I would have guessed. I have tried using, when we were in class, we've got 2 cameras in our classroom, so you can adjust the cameras back and forth to make sure that the students who are Zooming in can see the students who are interacting with the professor. So that was a little adjustment for me being in the classroom, because the faculty has to take on the role of the director as well. You've got to direct where the camera is, what the other students are seeing that aren't in the classroom with you. So that's a little bit of an adjustment. It's actually a little bit easier doing it remotely right now, just through Zoom and not having that classroom component. So there is a little bit of a learning curve that does have to happen there to be comfortable with those resources or those technologies.
And for you, Amy, what do you see as far as percentage? What number of students are in class versus synchronous online versus asynchronous?
Mine is about half and half. And even just looking at the spring registration, because we allow them there's 2 sections that show in one master class, and it looks like it's about half and half for my students at least.
Okay. And I see some other nods there from the other panelists. Is that about the number that you anticipate or that you've experienced?
We haven't implemented ours yet because we haven't had the opportunity to be face-to-face. I was nodding as in, okay, thanks for the information.
Great. How about you, Karen? What have you experienced?
I only really implemented it in COVID. So, I mean, I'm only comparing who comes to the live Zoom versus who's watching the videos. And I've had more watch the videos. I've only had a few. So that's been a little bit of a struggle. I've only had a few people on the Zoom. So sometimes I feel like I'm talking to the computer alone. But luckily the 2 that do come a lot, they are very engaging. So that helps.
Great. Ryan McCabe addressed this question at the administrators panel on Tuesday. And if I'm recalling correctly, he said that it looks like the numbers that are attending the live sessions or face-to-face is dwindling as the semester kind of comes to a close, but we're not sure if those data are due to COVID related issues or if that's like a phenomenon we're going to see within the HyFlex attendance of live versus asynchronous components of the courses. So
I can talk about that just for a little bit because I was teaching Flex before COVID. So I have a little bit of, context to compare. when I first started teaching Flex, I would say probably a third of the class would attend face-to-face, and that core of students remained face-to-face the entire semester. And then I would say the vast majority of the rest did the live online sessions. And then in each of my Flex classes, I would have a handful, so maybe 2 or 3 students who were completely asynchronous. This semester, COVID, the first time I've ever taught a class from start to finish during COVID, we had, at the very beginning, I would say about 6 or 8 students who came in face-to-face. And again, the vast majority attend live online. I have a few more who are completely synchronous, maybe 5 in this class. And then Ryan's projection about the COVID semester is the same thing that I've seen in my class. I had, before we went completely remote right before Thanksgiving, I was down to 1 student attending face-to-face. And prior to that, for the several weeks before that, it had been 2 students that were coming face-to-face, and almost everybody else was doing the live online sessions each week.
Great, thank you for that. And John Locke just posted some numbers of what he's experiencing with his course there. We are really approaching the end of the hour, and the last component of our panel was going to focus on faculty supports. We have an entire hour tomorrow dedicated to that, but if anybody on the panel would like to address, what supports you received were the most helpful, what other supports you might envision going forward would be helpful. If you want to share that, that would be really great.
I would just reiterate the support of the instructional technologies team is critical. This cannot happen without them. And I would say money. You need some money for technology. And we've had several meetings where the faculty say this is what we need to make this work very effectively. And then, but there's always a budgetary issue, which we understand. But we do need to, the stark reality is you do need money for the technology necessary to implement this effectively. That's difficult right now as we all face budget cuts, but it should be acknowledged.
That's great. And that was actually a question in the chat. As you were saying that, someone was typing that in the chat. Well, more about faculty compensation, but anybody else for faculty supports?
I think for us at Canton, to April's point, we had really, really supportive and motivated administrators who wanted to see this happen, because our campus is really quite focused on student success. And to me, and I think to our administration, offering this additional level of flexibility for students is a retention concern. And so it's worth investment. So if it can be articulated in that way, that offering additional modalities to students is an effort aimed at student retention, I think that's pretty critical. And then the other thing that the college has invested in is a learning spaces technician. So this is a person who, he was actually on our panel yesterday, the technology panel. Our learning spaces technician is assigned to our Flex classroom spaces and takes care of our Flex mobile carts. And he's kind of on call for the faculty members who are teaching. And he is amazing and really a valuable addition to our staff. He has been super helpful to me. And I can't thank the institution enough for giving us Ed. So that's one of the things that's been a great support.
Great. And I know that there were quite a few more questions that were specific to students, and the planning committee for this HyFlex webinar series, we tended to focus on the faculty supports and administrative concerns. We are planning a couple of sessions next spring that will focus on supporting students on the communications with students, etc. So look for those to address those questions in much more depth. I want to take the last minute here to thank everybody for participating here in the panel today. Amy, Karen, April, Janet, Michelle, and Andrea. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. Again, these sessions are recorded. I posted a link in the chat, but I'll post it again really quickly here. I apologize if we weren't able to get to everybody's questions in the chat. We had a limited amount of time today, but I hope to see you all tomorrow at the faculty supports panel, where we'll address some more of these issues, maybe share some resources like Judy was doing there in the chat. So thank you to everyone again. Have a great rest of your day. And